here we are for another episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is episode number 213, being recorded on Wednesday, May 6th, 2026, on a cloudy and rainy day. It is a little chilly outside, but we've got a great breeze coming through the windows. The cats are running around acting like maniacs. The coffee is hot. And I'm back to talk about my favorite films of the 21st century. We are about halfway through the list. If you are listening to these in parts, then you can look at the descriptions of the previous episodes to if you want to catch up. I've been doing these in alphabetical order. And as I've said before, I do plan on putting these together in one compilation if you don't want to keep on clicking through different episodes, whether that be on YouTube or Spotify. But either way, yeah, it's been interesting, really only talking about my favorite films of the 21st century, and really not much else film-wise. There's going to be plenty to talk about when I eventually go through these all. There's been plenty of good films seen this year, plenty of films in general to talk about, and that will be discussed in due time. But until then, we're going to carry on. So we're going to go back to 2004, directed by and written by Jared Hess, as well as co-written by Joshua Hess, is Napoleon Dynamite. The film stars John Heder, Efron Ramirez, John Grise, Aaron Rule, Tina Majorino, and this was a film that it's interesting to kind of look at this in the pop culture landscape. A film that was not known, was very known, was possibly oversaturated, and then was kind of, its popularity sort of went down from there. But I remember being in school, and this was one that for a while people were always talking about how much they loved the film. And then at a certain point, I don't know what point that was. I think maybe it was just an oversaturation sort of level in terms of the the constant quoting. I know they made an animated TV show, the pop culture zeitgeist sort of aspect of it, and I started to see sort of a pushback of people going like, "Oh, I actually don't like this film. I actually don't like this film," and it's a film that I've always been a fan of, but one that on repeated viewings, especially as I've gotten older, I've gained a greater appreciation for, aside from just being a really funny comedy. It's the last time that I had watched it, I got something far more emotional out of it that I had never got before. And it's funny when I remember back in, must have been 2003, 2004. Also, I'm just going to sip of this coffee, so bear with me 1 second. Being in the cinema, in one of the cinemas that's no longer around, and seeing the trailer for this, I thought it looked so strange. I couldn't remember the title. I was like, I didn't know. I don't even think I was able to read the cursive in the title. And it said Napoleon Dynamite. I didn't know what it was. It's like, that's a weird name. I don't know what that is. I don't even know what it says really. Or maybe I don't even remember actually if there was cursive in the trailer. Either way, I remember the title being like, I don't even know what that is. And then years and years later, this film becoming such a big, just a huge film. I mean, this is very much an independent film. John Heder, I think, was only paid a couple thousand for his role. It's very, I mean, you have Efron Ramirez, who, funnily enough, was also in Crank, High Voltage. I think probably the biggest actor of this would be Diedrich Bader, who's been in a bunch of stuff. John Grise, who plays Uncle Rico, is hilarious in the film. I think he really steals a lot of the scenes that he's in. And I guess Indy in comparison, so I don't know what the budget on this, but I know this was picked up eventually by I think it was Fox Searchlight, so I don't think it had really much of a budget behind it. And I think this may have actually been Jared Hess's directorial debut, and he's done a couple of films since. Let's see here. Yeah, this was his feature debut. Let me see here. He did a short in 2003 called Peluca. And he'd follow this up with Nacho Libre in 2006. Gentlemen Broncos in 2009, Don Veriden in 2015, Masterminds in 2016, Thelma the Unicorn in 2024, and then a Minecraft movie in 2025. But I never saw, I don't think, any of his follow-ups to this. All I know is that I heard unanimously a lot of them were not very good, but from what I saw for like Gentlemen Broncos and Don Verridon and Masterminds, it all has the same kind of I don't even really want to call it white trash because it's really not that, but it's this kind of a southern, maybe it's a Midwest kind of flair to it. Almost feels like 70s in the way these characters dress and act. And even with this film, I mean, there's a computer in it at one point, but this really does feel kind of like a 70s set film. But I don't know. I mean, this is a very popular film, so I'm really not going to go through the plot of this per se. And I don't think the plot of this really matters all that much. I've said it before that I think comedies are the one genre that you can really kind of get away. Maybe comedy, even action, if you will. Well, you know what? Actually, no. I'm going to take that back. I think comedy is the only genre where you can specifically get away with really not needing a plot at all. For any other genre, you can have a hangout film, you can have a loose kind of film, you can have a drama of just characters hanging out. But I think in comedy, as long as you're, if you're laughing and it is working for you, then oftentimes you don't really even, you're not really going to be recounting the plot. I mean, the plot may be a funny part of it, but we have these characters and Napoleon Dynamite, played by John Heater, who is, he's a strange kind of character. He is he's apathetic to the point of being just generally disinterested in a lot of things, but he's very fixated on a couple things he loves. He loves drawing. He is. It's hard to describe him as a character. He's so disinterested, and he's so. His reflexes are just so slow. It's like he's playing catch with everybody else, but he has. He cares about people, even if he doesn't really show it on the surface. He is with his family. He has his brother Kip, played by Aaron Rule, who is spending his days online chatting with babes. Anyways, his grandma, it was the grandma gets in an accident, and their uncle Rico has to come, played by John Grise. And from there, we just get a series of really kind of odd characters, odd scenes. We have this foreign exchange student, Pedro, played by Efren Ramirez, who also has a similar demeanor to Napoleon, but at first you think that maybe it's just a cultural thing where, or a language thing where maybe he doesn't understand, but then you really kind of realize that there is a real heart to that character. I think it's one of these films that doesn't really need to tell you about the emotions and the feelings of these characters. There's just one shot at the end where Pedro just reacts to something that Napoleon does for him, and it really kind of sums up his character, and it really shows you that there's life behind these characters' eyes. They're not just vessels to be laughed at, but it's a film where you just want to talk about individual scenes. There's just so many ridiculous, just funny. I mean, this is a film that has been quoted to death. It's been such a staple of contemporary pop culture, but even when I rewatch it, I just find myself laughing so hard. Just at some of these, the way that Jared Hess just directs some of the comedy. There's a great part where Napoleon wants to ride Pedro's bike. He wants to ride a ramp, go off a ramp, and the way the camera is stationary and all the comedy happens in frame, it's just so funny. Or when Kip is testing out how strong a bull is by running it over, and the way that what they choose to cut to is just so funny. You have these oddball characters like Rex, played by Diedrich Bader, who has one scene early on where they're attending this kickboxing class. I think it was kickboxing. It was some sort of fighting class, but he's wearing these ridiculous parachute pants that have the American flag on it. I didn't even really mention Deb, played by Tina Majorino. She is the one who is also kind of an outsider like these characters. She kind of just drifts and is doing her own thing. She ends up at Napoleon's house at one point and ends up with these, I don't know what they're called, but they were popular in the mid 2000s. I remember everyone at school had them. They're like these plastic sort of keychains, if you will, that you had to like tie around. Everyone I knew knew how to do it, and I couldn't for the life of me ever figure it out. I wish my fiance was here so I could ask what those were called, because I can't for the life of me remember what those were called. But yeah, I remember at school everyone had those. I never saw like a total kit like that though. But I think one of the things that really kind of put this film over the edge for me into making this Just a total favorite of mine. Not even just on specifically from this last viewing, but just in general. What really kind of finally sealed the deal on me is just the total heart that this film has. I think the third act of this film really took me aback on this past viewing because I was able to. There's just a montage at the end of the film where we see all these different characters, all these strange kind of outsiders, and everybody's doing their own thing, but they're at the point in their life where they want to be, or they need to be, and they're surrounded by people who love them. Even if it's just something as simple as a game of tetherball, or it's or not tether. Is that what it's called? Tetherball. What's that game where it's the ball on a string and yes. Is it tetherball? It's gonna be embarrassing if it's not. Yeah, it is tetherball. Okay, I always wanted to play it, but I never had access to one. Or just a character feeding their llama, or a character just meeting another character without having to say any dialogue. I found it just so incredibly warm and just so incredibly heartfelt. I think the ending of this movie, it's just, man, it really just kind of almost made me emotional in a way. They're playing The Promise by When in Rome, and it's just these two characters. I don't give it all away if you haven't seen it, but I think just the whole setting of it is just so heartfelt. Also, got to say the opening credits as well. We kind of take for granted now opening credits in films, and I think it's something like the great opening credits in films. You think about like Lord of War, and you think about like films like this as well. And Vertigo, the opening credits in this is great. The different kind of lunch trays, even the soundtrack of this film. There's just some strange. I don't even know what kind of instrument it is. There's a scene early on where Napoleon's on the bus, and there's this long scene where he has this action figure on a string, and he throws it out of a bus, and it's just dragging behind him. I don't know what kind of instrument that is, but the combination of that music playing with this kid just kind of staring at him with just a total lack of expression on his face, of just total ambivalence. I think it's one of the funniest things. Every time I've seen this film, like I said, I just love it more and more. And like I said, with this past viewing, just the heart of these characters. I think an important thing is that all of these characters, even the ones who are jerks, are still really likable. Even when Uncle Rico, is being a jerk and is going too far, he just has this like little moment at the end where there's no dialogue, but I just was like, man, this is really kind of touching me. I really just was taken aback by this, and this is one where I've not seen the animated show. I'm just so glad they never made a sequel to this, because I really don't. I don't want to see what happens to these characters after this. It almost feels like a memory in a way, where it's sort of like these people that you knew for this one period of your life, and you got to wonder, whatever happened to them. And it's almost, I think it's better kind of to leave it the way. I read a little bit like John Heder was talking about what he thinks the characters would be up to, and I was like, I don't know, I don't, maybe, but yeah, the animated show I never watched, because I think a big part of this is the way that it's the actor's delivery, it's the facial expressions, it's the way it's directed. I think it works best as live action, because you have the opportunity for these long kind of pauses, these long kind of sequences where Napoleon's just drinking this milk, or a character's just looking at him, or they're just watching something, or they're fighting, Napoleon and oh my gosh, how embarrassing, I already forgot his name. And Kip, oh my gosh, are just like kind of like doing this clumsy kind of slap fighting. Some stuff just translates better to live action, and that's, this is one that I think kind of works out better this way. And it's, I am, even though I know that his follow-ups, I guess, I know Nacho Libre is well received. I'm talking about, I'm curious to kind of watch Gentlemen Broncos, Don Verden, and Masterminds, because they look closer to this film. But from what I hear, they're not very good. But but at the same time, you want to judge it for yourself. And I mean, with the financial success of a Minecraft movie, I hope that he's able to, I don't know, use that as an opportunity to do more films like this that he wants to, unless he was really passionate with Minecraft movie, then God bless him. I haven't seen it; it's not really my kind of movie. But I think he's doing the sequel to that too, to my knowledge. So either way, yeah, Napoleon Dynamite. I think just about everybody at least knows it. If you grew up in the 2000s, in the late 90s, and you were, in school at that point, everybody was quoting this, and I think that kind of overshadowed just how strong of a film this is, because even the whole dancing at the end is just so, the way it's directed is just so captivating, and it's just so fun, and the reaction. There's this one actor, I don't know who this actor is, but he cracks me up. I'm just going to find it right here. Trevor Snar. He looks like he's about 30, and he's one of these high school students. And his reactions to the film crack me up. There's one part where I don't know if he asked the kid for like lunch money or something, but the kid won't give it to him. So he just starts like grabbing the kid by the neck and just starts like shaking him. And I don't know, something about that actor is just so funny, man. Every time he's in the movie, kicks Napoleon at one point because he won't give him any of his tater tots. And my gosh, man, I remember being at a dinner and there was a bunch of us, there was a bunch of acquaintances of mine, and it was, the topic of this came up, and everyone's like, "Oh, that movie's horrible. That movie's one of the worst movies." Blah blah blah. And it was an acquaintance of mine, well now ex-girlfriend. Her and I were the other ones telling holding the fort down, being like, "Yeah, this film was great, man." It's just quoting the film and talking about the scenes, man. This is just a total cozy film, man. This is seminal cozy cinema, man. I really just every time I watch it, I just get so involved with it. Not just the comedy, but I mean, it's not like drama, but just the heart of the film, just the warmth of it all, and just by the end, you're like, it's kind of silly, but there's also like these outsider characters who get get a point in their life that it's a good jumping off point where it's like, okay, the movie's over, and I'm really glad I took the time to be with these people. So Napoleon Dynamite, just one of a total cozy film. And speaking of cozy films, we're gonna hop on over about 14 years or so later. Gonna jump to 2019. From director Quentin Tarantino, my favorite of his films, of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino is just so fascinating of a filmmaker because he's a filmmaker who I confidently feel has gotten better over his career. I found that when I look at my favorites of his films, they all seem to be. I mean, he has 9 films, but I'm talking about the ones that I've responded to the most have been Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Hateful Eight. I did recently see Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair, and that was a real spectacular film. But Jackie Brown from that era, from the Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction era, Jackie Brown is definitely my favorite. I think once Tarantino is kind of well, let me actually talk about the film because I only got X amount of time on this, and I want to at least get to some of the points that I want to highlight. But we have Leonardo DiCaprio. Plays Rick Dalton. He was on this show, Bounty Law, but his career is kind of going down the drain. He leaves the show. He's trying to be a movie star, but it's not really working out. His best friend is stuntman Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt. They hang out. Cliff Booth drives him around, and we follow something of at a certain point, a day in the life, really, for most part of this character, of this fictional Rick Dalton character. He gets an opportunity to be on this show. So we follow him, we follow Cliff Booth and what he does throughout the day, meeting up with these hippies, this one hippie chick played by Margaret Qualley, and of course you got to also mention Margot Robbie playing the real Sharon Tate, because this film takes the fictional Tarantino characters and elements and puts it in the backdrop of 1968 Hollywood. So you have, Sharon Tate in the film, Roman Polanski, Steve McQueen, Jay Sebring, Tex Watson, these real people, and it's Tarantino's own spin on it. And it's a film that I don't know if I can ever properly put into words what, how special this was seeing this in theater. This is actually the film I've seen the most in theaters. I saw this film 10 times in theaters, and I also got to mention, I'm not from the West Coast. I've never been to the West Coast, but I've heard people who live in LA and go and see it there, and how meaningful the film is to them. And I can only imagine. I'm watching this on my own, and what I'm getting out of the film is something uniquely to me, because I think this has a lot of the elements that you would come to expect from a Tarantino film, which are. You have these really solid needle drops, the love letter to films of, in this case, specifically this time period, including with the soundtrack, and also with the needle drops. I gotta say, there's a lot of great ones in here. I think Tarantino, for the most part, is pretty great at needle drops. I think Django Unchained was the only one where I would say he kind of dropped the ball with that. Something about contemporary, or something about hip-hop and rap music feels so contemporary against a period piece setting that it just never works for me. It's to me it's like putting like heavy metal music against like a western. It just it just doesn't work for me. But the needle drops are great here. There's long sequences of characters just driving. We're listening to the radio. There's just like it's a film that, like Napoleon Dynamite, is really less about the plot and more about hanging out with these characters. This is very much a hangout film because we're jumping in between these three stories, of Rick Dalton, Cliff Booth, and Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate is doing her own thing. She's going into town. And it's something as simple as going into town to get a book for Roman Polanski. But then the film she was in, The Wrecking Crew, is across the street. And I think Tarantino's maturity as he's gotten older has been is more what I'm attracted to. It does have the violence and it does have the comedic moments you would expect from a Tarantino film. There's a scene of real grisly violence in this that, in the case of this film, I would say you didn't really even need to put it in there, but it feels earned at that moment because the whole rest of the film is so subdued that you get this one long sequence of just extreme violence that comes off as just so comedic. But even with The Hateful Eight, I think that film, when I say the maturity, it's that really good dialogue that Tarantino is known for. Just these really long sequences. I'm in the minority when I say that I'm not. I like Inglourious Basterds, but I'm not in love with that film. But you always got to remember that the opening back and forth dialogue between those two characters, and the palpable tension. They're so thick you can actually just feel it in the air, and he does that so well in The Hateful Eight. These long sequences where a character knows something, or a character's trying to bait someone into something else, and then some of my favorite stuff in that film is the end of the film. Without getting into spoilers or anything like that, where multiple characters are trapped. They're all trapped basically against each other. Where there's no way they can all leave there at the same time. Something bad is going to happen, and just the way that all unfolds is just so great. But here it's the heart of this film that I think kind of runs so great, because when you have these sequences of something simple like Rick Dalton just getting his dialogue correct, or Sharon Tate when she's in the movie theater and people are audibly reacting positively to her in her film, and just it cuts to her, this huge smile on her face, or Cliff Booth just going to Spawn Ranch and just having so much confidence in himself, he just beats the hell out of this one hippie guy, and there's this great moment where the hippie guy is like, can you just give me a towel or something, and he just he lights a cigarette and goes, nope. Brad Pitt definitely deserved the Oscar win for this. That was a very deserved win. He is so cool. He is so laid back in this film. He has this natural kind of charisma. And it's, of course, Tarantino's love letter to this era, to the late 60s, to the late 60s LA. And so much so that you're not really concerned about plot. You really are just concerned about hanging out with these characters. Because there's even a sequence where it's like almost like the end of a long day, or the end of like a good day, where these characters are going home, where after a day of filming, Timothy Olyphant kicks on his bike to go home, and Sharon Tate walks out in the street and the sun is setting and it's nighttime and you're gonna hang out and watch TV. It's just completely cozy, man. And just the some of the needle drops in this. Every time I hear these songs, it just brings back such a specific feeling. Like the version of California Dreamin' on this, it's not acoustic. I don't know. You can look it up on the soundtrack, but it just has this certain end of the day feeling that I've been driving and this song has come on, and I just kind of get those goosebumps all over again. And of course, with Tarantino doing what he does with history and doing kind of this alternate version of it, and also just his love letter to Sharon Tate, someone who, had a short career, had a very short life, and unfortunately whose life has been overshadowed by a tragedy. I have to mention as well, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojtek Wachowski, at least in the context of the film, because there was also, oh my gosh, what the hell was his name? It was Stephen Parent. I'm not even talking about the La Bianca, I'm talking about in this case, these people who have been unfortunately overshadowed by this tragedy, but now Tarantino has taken this and has breathed new life into Sharon Tate, where Sharon Tate is no longer just a victim. Now she is just almost like someone who like radiates this positivity, radiates this light and this joy. And you can see it in Sharon Tate's films. You see it in like Fearless Vampire Killers, and what was that beach one she did? That wasn't very good, but she just, or of course Valley of the Dolls and all that. And you just see her, and the Wrecking Crew, and she has this angelic look to her that Margot Robbie encapsulates so well. Just little moments, the way that she kind of goes about, the way that she just like sees the marquee of the Wrecking Crew, the way that she just interacts with her characters. It's just so light. It's just so loving in a way that people have strong opinions about Tarantino positively or negatively, but I think one of the things that he really does is brings on a mainstream huge level a new appreciation to whether it be music from another film, or an actor that's mentioned, or a film that's mentioned, or to me, I find that more interesting than like just the references. It's funny. I remember the last time I watched True Romance, I did not connect with it because I'm like, oh man, this is I get why people are not, when people criticize Tarantino for his kind of overindulgence in his movie kind of references and all that. This is where I'm getting it from, and I'm not saying True Romance is bad film or anything like that, because it was a film at one point I liked, and I don't even really dislike it, but it's the last time I saw it, I was like, oh, this is what it feels like, because I'm really kind of turned off by this dialogue and this. So now that we're able to get to a point where, you can, because it takes place in Hollywood, in in 68, you're going to have those references, you're going to have these people, but it feels more... not quite, diegetic's not really the correct word, but it makes more sense in that scene. And it's also not just the big films of that period, because they're watching, there's an ad for Three in the Attic on TV, which is I think it's actually it's a pretty good film that really no one talks about, and they're watching like FBI, which is, the film is not worried about making sure something's always happening, because some of the best stuff in the movie is just like that sequence when Rick and Cliff are watching his appearance on FBI, and Rick is like doing almost kind of like commentary. Watching the episode, he's talking about, oh, that guy's a fucking prick, and then oh, that's Bobby Diaz, good guy, just stuff like that is so funny. So that, yeah, you can have this big kind of ending and all that, and that's fine. But then you get to the very end of the film, and also I got to put on Emil Hirsch as Jay Sebring in the film. Very good. He doesn't have a whole lot of time in the film, but I think that really kind of works to his benefit, because the dialogue that he does have and the scenes that he does have, that also feels like a very loving look at Jay Sebring, who is a real hairdresser, was involved with Sharon before she was involved with Roman Polanski. But just the interaction they have at the end, and just like, I swear to God, the last like minute of the film, and before it fades to the title, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I don't get on like cry or anything like that, but I'm just like, it gets me like so emotional, and just the music that's played, just the loving reaction that these characters have to each other. I really, if you're really, it's so hard to describe the feelings of this film, the emotion this film kind of brings out. I've seen it a couple times since on 4K, but in a lot of ways, I almost kind of want to cherish my time that I saw it, in the summer of 2019. I've heard a lot of people kind of mention, before COVID and all that, this was like, Tarantino says like 2019 is kind of like the last, real year for movies. And in a lot of way, I don't even think I entirely disagree. I mean, maybe in terms of theatrical experience, yeah, I've had stuff like, big events like the Minecraft movie and stuff like that, and like the, Michael Jackson movie, people are coming out. But, it's like people, like when I saw this, the amount of times I saw this in theaters and how many times it was packed, and being out to dinner with acquaintances and saying like, oh, let's go see that. You guys are gonna love it. Let's go see that again. Or, people going out to see even stuff I'm not really interested in, like, the Avengers and stuff. It just feels like the way this film ends is sort of like a cap off to that whole era. And honestly, actually, like, man, I'm just so curious what Tarantino's going to do for his final film, because if there was ever a way to end your filmography, this is pretty brilliant way to do it. Pretty emotional, but man, there's so much more I want to say about this, but time is just not on my side. So I'm going to wrap it up right here, guys. So, two total great, hilarious hangout films with so much heart, and I always feel redundant to say that I love these films, because obviously here they are, but just a phenomenal film here. So Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate it. Excuse me. You guys take care, and until next time.